Chris. I'd like to call a meeting to order of the City of Monona Plan Commission, Monday, March 11th, 2019. You call the roll?
Mr. Homburg.
Here.
Mr. Stein.
Here.
Alder Moore.
Here.
Alder Spite.
Here.
Mr. Holmquist.
Here.
Ms. Fox.
Here.
Mr. Dorschel.
Here.
Thank you. I'd like to ask for a motion to approve the minutes of December 10th, 2018. Do I have a motion to approve the minutes?
So move.
Do I have a second?
Second.
I have a second. Any additions, corrections?
Just one minor typo in the name, Carl Sansis in the first after A. It's a strike the D. That's all. It's just a typo.
How far down? Susan?
First line under E.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Any others? Okay, all those in favor of accepting the minutes, approving the minutes as amended, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Minutes are approved. Have any appearances? We do have one appearance, subject being sign code from Christy Schilling. Christy, could you?
Good evening. Hi, Christy Schilling. I reside at 4502 Gordon Avenue, but I'm also the CEO of the Monona East Side Business Alliance. So I'm here in more in that capacity, serving my business constituents, let's say. I just want to first say thank you for the time and effort you've put into revamping the sign code. While I think the graphic elements do make the plan easier to understand, I think there are some issues with the other contents. We're now in an era where businesses need to attract every single customer they possibly can because almost everything except a hot cup of coffee can be purchased online. Modern times require modern thinking, and while the contents of the plan may have sufficed, say, 10 years ago, maybe even 5 years ago, our business community, especially our retailers, are feeling a greater pinch than ever before due to online shopping, so bold new thinking is required. When your city is like Monona and has a 2-mile main street that was largely developed in the 50s, 60s, and 70s, features the buildings set far back with large parking areas in the front, it's even more important that the businesses have increased signage options to attract customers. Let's look at the loss of Shopko. It's probably unlikely that we may someday in the far, far future, see a retailer go into that space, but it's not going to happen anytime soon, probably, unfortunately. That should be a clear signal about how we need to rethink signage restrictions in our community. Taking this a step further, so let's put on a visitor's lens. Let's say you've never been to Monona before, and you're going to be staying in one of Monona's soon-to-be 3 hotels. And you say, let's take a drive and see what there is to do in this community. That's what I do when I travel. Well, you could probably get on my bike or walk, but when we have a 2-mile main street, you typically would probably drive. With more restrictions placed on signage, one could argue that it creates a safety hazard, given that our main street planning, with those buildings set far back, and visitors having to search extra hard to read the signage, see what businesses those are set so far back, and trying to figure why that would even warrant them parking and getting out of their car. The missing consideration in the plan is the effect that online shopping has had on retailers worldwide. It's time to revamp signage regulations so retailers can stay open, they can attract even more customers, and not succumb to defeat by Amazon. I hope you'll consider doing almost everything the opposite of what the plan recommends, since it does not take into consideration the largest factor impacting retailers today, online shopping. I realize it probably seems like a terrible waste of money considering that the plan is already laid out, but maybe if the process had been flipped and the business community was allowed to have input or asked for input prior to Vanderwall creating the code, it would have been a fiscally prudent way to devise a plan, in my opinion. If we use another waterfront community as a model, let's say Egg Harbor, for instance. It's one that's done an excellent job at grabbing motorists' attention, so they want to park their cars. They want to get out and see what are inside all these buildings, what are all these signs, and saying that there's something great here and waiting for me. It also encourages motorists to slow down, encourages bicycle and pedestrian traffic, which is all things that I know you have worked on in the past to increase that. This could be a better model to follow in today's marketplace. I think loosening the restrictions could prove to be an excellent economic stimulus by attracting even more businesses to locate here, and to further kind of separate us from Madison, giving businesses more reason to come to Monona to start their business versus Madison, and kind of help our identity. Is when you drive from Madison, you obviously would notice something is different here, and you would know blatantly that you're in Monona, a community that's maybe a little bit sign happy. I think today our retailers and restaurateurs really need the loosening of restrictions in any way they can in today's marketplace. I hope you'll consider the struggles that our businesses are facing today and work that into the new sign code. Thank you for listening.
I have a question.
Yes.
Christie? Can we do that in our public hearing? This is appearances.
Okay, I'm going to close the appearance section with the no other forms in front of me and move on to unfinished business, which we have no work as well, and on to new business, number A, 6A, public hearing on the proposed alterations to the City of Monona landmark property at 4705 Tony Watha Trail, requested by property owners Troy Pendrick and Rob Hardy, represented by architect Mark Henricks, for determination by the Plan Commission if the proposed alterations would be in harmony with the external appearance of the landmark on site, and whether the proposal would significantly alter or destroy the historic characteristics of the landmark according to section 13-1-64 of the Historic Conservation Ordinance 2016, case number 2-001-2019. Are you the architect?
Yes.
Okay, you can step up to the podium and introduce yourself. Give you an opportunity to present first.
This probably won't work because my
That probably won't overhead.
chief,
I have the photos he's furnished us, so we can get those on there if you need to.
I use cheap tape to hold this, so we'll use better around the house. Anyway,
That would be a trip.
just leave it there.
Oh,
It's okay. Just really the main reason for the
If you could actually just reintroduce yourself again in front of the
Oh, okay.
microphone, that would be terrific.
my name is Mark Henricks. I'm the architect working on the project for Rob Hardy and Todd Pedrick on Tony Watha Trail. And it's a 1900 farmhouse that is a landmark in Monona. And the main reason for the project is to, well, as we all know, even though Wisconsin has perfect weather every single day of the year, there is a need for some sheltered parking and storage area, which they have not had previously. The owners have lived in the house for 7 or 8 years, and they've always been very conscientious and respectful of anything they've done with the house. And now they want to pursue the garage project again. They had looked at an option previously that had a roof line that kind of followed the roof line of the original house, and it was a bit overwhelming. So now we're taking the approach, whatever we're doing, we're trying to minimize the impact and let the farmhouse be the primary focus. So we're tackling that in 2 ways, kind of minimizing the scale and the siting by essentially burrowing into the slope of the hill and the yard, and really only about a quarter of the garage is exposed to view. And the second tactic is to use materials that complement the house in every regard. The cedar siding that's painted, it's the same exposure as the house, 3 inches, it's painted the same color. Window trim will be same as what the house has, black window frames and window trim. Other trim on the garage will be either cedar, again painted white, or composite material where it's close and has contact with the ground, but that will also be white. It has a railing or a short fence on top, which is necessary for safety reasons, obviously, and there again it'll be wood painted black to complement the trim on the house. And it also kind of disappears a little bit more into the background than a white fence would. And the doors again are white and kind of they will probably be an insulated composite type of door with a grain texture and a white finish. That's really the major thrust behind the project, so I'm kind of open to taking questions more than anything. Oh, it also, besides the sheltered storage and for cars and whatnot, it does give them better access to the house directly instead of climbing some circuitous stairs exposed to the weather.
Terrific. Thank you. So we'll take questions in the next section, if you will, as a group. But is there anyone else here that would like to speak as it relates to, in this public hearing portion, as it relates to this project? Seeing no others here interested in speaking related to that project, I'd like to close the public hearing section then, and we'll move on to 6B, which is action on the proposed alterations to the Monona landmark property at 4705 Tony-Watha Trail, requested by property owners Toy Pendrick and Rob Hardy, represented by architect Mark Henricks, for determination by the Plan Commission if the proposed alterations would be in harmony with the external appearance of the landmark on site, and whether the proposal would significantly alter or destroy the historic characteristics of the landmark according to section 13-1-64 of the Historic Conservation Ordinance 2016, case number 2-001-2019. So, this gives you an opportunity, Mark, to come back up to the podium if you would.
I did forget to comment about the stone, which there's a small portion on the garage, and then also around, there'll be some retaining wall aspect to the project, as well as some terracing alongside for planted areas, and we'll use the same kind of stone, which complements the foundation that's exposed on the house.
Great, thank you. Just stay right there, and would you like to share recommendations coming from the plan office prior to questions?
Yes, and before I do that, I just wanted to clarify the process that we're using to make the determination tonight. So the Landmarks Commission updated their historic preservation ordinance in 2018, which changed the process for how these determinations of landmark properties are going to be made in the future. So any property that receives landmark status after that ordinance update of July 2018 is going to follow the new process, which only requires Landmarks Commission review and approval. And the Landmarks Commission intends to review and redesignate landmark properties so that all properties will be under the same ordinance, but they're waiting for the report by Mead and Hunt to review the results of their citywide architectural survey that's currently underway before they pursue the process of redesignating the landmark sites. In the meantime, for this proposal, we're following the process that was in place when the property was landmarked, which requires Plan Commission to make a determination. Any new construction on single-family residential property requires a zoning permit to be reviewed and approved by city staff, but landmark properties in Monona require the additional review of plans to determine if the proposed alterations would be in harmony with the external appearance of the landmark on site and whether the proposal would significantly alter or destroy the historic characteristics of the landmark. That being said, the Landmarks Commission did review this project on February 13th at their meeting and made an advisory recommendation to the Plan Commission for tonight. A motion carried at their meeting to recommend to the Plan Commission that the project, as represented by the renderings submitted to the Commission and pending Plan Commission review of material samples, does not detrimentally change, destroy, or adversely affect any architectural feature of the landmark, and that the proposed work is in harmony with the historic characteristics of the landmark site. So the Plan Commission will be making their determination tonight. If after their review it's found to not have a detrimental impact on the historic character or architectural features of the property, then the applicants will proceed with the permitting process facilitated by staff.
Thank you. We'll now open it up for questions. Chris, would you like to start?
Sure. Before I have any questions, I do have a comment. Are any of the owners here? You are. I just wanted to commend you on the work you've done on that home. I don't think most people realize what a project it is. It's a labor of love. You know, I went by it again for tonight's meeting, and the siding, the windows, all the things you've done there have really, you've done a great job rebuilding that. And I don't think most people understand all the meetings you have to go to when you have a home like that and how hard it is. So really appreciate all the effort you put into that. Thank you. I have a question. As staff, do we have a history of why this was designated a landmark? Sometimes it's because of the architecture, sometimes it's because of the occupant, which might put a different level of scrutiny on the architecture. Do we know that?
I do not, actually.
I tried to research it. I read the Landmark Commission book on it, and I'm unclear after reading it. It seems like it was one of the first permanent homes in the Monona area, and it's only been occupied by the Wagners and Oakrys. Oakrys I knew, the Wagners I'm too young for that. And so I'm not sure if it's because there's only two owners, because it was one of the original homes. But one thing it did mention there is the sandstone foundations are talked about in there. But so when you said the stone's going to match, it's going to be something similar to the sandstone foundation.
Yes.
I don't know if that's key, why it was nominated or not, but that's one of the things there aren't many commission members left from when this was done, but I suppose we could find out. Just in the future, we won't have many more, but it'd be nice to know why it was designated a landmark. You know where I'm going at. If it was because it was a famous violin maker, the architecture may not be as important as the home and the location. You know, that we want to preserve, former Monona leader's homestead or something, compared to this was a really unique architecture that has to be pristine. So, you know where I'm going with the decision. I think either way, this is a fine proposal. I'm totally in favor of it. And again, I'm sorry you have to come to so many meetings to be able to improve your home.
I think the original designation was because it was one of the early homes, primarily.
It talks about maple floors, which you can or can't change, and high ceilings. Well, what old home didn't have that? So
Yeah.
I was just unclear when I read it what the criteria was when they decided to designate this one. So that was the basis of my question, but I think it's great that you're putting all the time and effort and love into this old home. Thank you.
Rob?
Yeah, I tend to agree with the Landmarks Commission's assessment of this. I think it looks good. I think all the improvements blend well. I did the site plan that you proposed. Is there, I can't remember, the property line setback? I thought it was
30.
50.
Which is, I think we're just over that with the garage.
So what's the 7 feet?
Off the setback.
That's
that line's the
that-
setback.
It's
yeah.
the setback, that's not the property
Yeah.
line.
Yeah,
Okay.
He designated the setback for us.
Okay. Okay. That was it.
Chad?
I would just concur with the comments that have already been made. This is a beautifully rendered addition to the home. And again, I would commend the homeowner, and it looks like you've got a reputable contractor to work with, so.
Brian?
I agree, actually. Also enjoyed the decision to offset it, to keep the house prominent feature of the property. I think that actually helped with the harmony aspect, given that we're not using the same roof line structure. That piece of it initially was like, And then when I looked at the site and then looked at kind of the offset, it does help keep the house as the focal point and the garage is not distracting, so looks good.
Okay. Susan?
I think it looks terrific. I live right down the street from it also, and I go past there a lot, and I've enjoyed watching what you've done to it, and I've been very impressed with it. And I've always wondered about the garage part, about how you were, because it just seemed like something you'd want to do at some point. When I saw these, I think it's perfect. I mean, I don't think you could do better, really. I mean, because I do like that, changing the roof line so the house stands up above it, and it goes very well. So, yeah, I think it's great.
I think the owners are to be commended also, and I think that the proposed addition is in complete harmony with the original house, and that the addition of the garage will be an enhancement to the property.
Thank you. I have a motion to approve the proposed alterations as drawn.
Move approval with findings of fact as written by staff.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank you, thank you. Well done. Moving on to 6C, public hearing on recommendation of the City Council on sign ordinance update is requested by the City of Monona and presented by Vanderwall Associates, case number 2-001-2018.
Evening, it's nice to see you, Mike Slavin at Ben Rohr from Vanderwall and Associates. If you recall, at our last meeting, we discussed with you 5 fine-tunings to the draft code that we were seeking your guidance on. Some of these were your response to the open house that we had before the last meeting. And what I'd like to do is go through those 5 issues and then give a summary of the overall code. The first of those issues was regarding the number of menu board signs allowed, because some businesses have multiple pedestrian entrances. Menu board signs is a new sign type that this code is providing. It doesn't exist right now, and it's one of 6 new sign types that this code is providing. And we discussed whether there should just be 1 per business or 1 per entrance, and I think the consensus we had was 1 per entrance, so that customers, if we had multiple entrances, would have a chance to see today's specials or things that are on the lunch menu, whatever the owner decided to put on the changes. The second was to allow an additional wall sign that faces a public space. Again, that was your suggestion based on comments that we received at the open house. And in the end, it came down to identifying some specific public spaces that we talked about at length. And one was the main channel of the Yahara River, or the second was corner lots. And again, this proposed change would allow that. So again, that's more signage than your current code allows for those kinds of wall signs. A third change had to do with yard signs that were available to houses that were on more than 1 lot. And our response was to define something called a yard sign site. It would be just specific to the yard sign issue, and the limit would be 1 sign per yard sign site. So a multiple lot home would be allowed 1. So the appearance is 1 sign per house, which we think will be perceived as consistent by anybody driving down the street, whereas if we had multiple signs and you can't see the lot lines, it wouldn't appear to be very consistent. The fourth issue had to do with definitions and rules related to temporary miscellaneous signs, and the proposed change was that a yard sign, oops, I'm sorry, I repeated that. That a yard sign site under the same ownership and occupied by the same owner, that's also part of that yard sign site. And then finally, we added a footnote that would allow the extra yard sign on corner lots or facing a lake or river. We talked about that as kind of quasi-public space. I would characterize those very much in the spirit of fine tuning. And what I'd like to do is just talk about the overall code. We had several objectives when we started the project. One was to seek public input. We had 3 plan commission meetings that were open to the public and the open house a month ago. I think a second objective, as we learned as we came into the project, that I think most of the plan commission and the committee felt that the rules pertaining to freestanding signs, the monument signs, on business primary signage were working well. In fact, we spent a couple meetings tweaking our model code to better reflect the practices that you've been putting in place consistently for many years. I think there was a lot of confidence that you showed in your current rules for the main kinds of business signs. A second main objective was to clarify that map that the city had been using with the big broad marker lines alongside the belt line, and it was hard to interpret that map. And so now we have a parcel-based map where I think it's very clear which parcels have access to pylon or pole signs. And then I think the final theme was more recognizing that more kinds of signage are out there and available right now, and making them available to businesses, including flag signs, which is the 6th additional sign, in addition to marquee signs and the menu board signs, and the blade signs and the suspended signs. So I think that those kind of carried the day for a lot of the additional signs that are in current business practices that haven't been addressed directly by your ordinance. And in every case, you allowed the use of those signs on almost every property, other than the marquee signs where it's limited to a specific range of theater and entertainment uses. So with that, we conclude our formal presentation and ask if you have any questions.
Before we close the public appearance section and ask for other people to come up, did you want to speak to Attorney Cole's memo as well? Or
That
did you want-
was purely just for review and recap, since we haven't been in front of you guys in, what,
Okay.
2.5 months now. We, in December, talked specifically about some of the Plan Commission's feelings and thoughts on the attorney's edits. And I just wanted to make you aware that we did inform the city staff of those edits, and they were fine with them. And we moved forward with
Okay.
installing those within the draft code that's been publicly released since
Okay.
January.
Okay, terrific. Just wanted to make sure that, since it was sitting on the desk when we walked in
I
tonight, I
had
wasn't
forgotten
sure
to
if it
include
was.
it in the packet earlier. It
Okay.
was not to be highlighted, really.
Terrific, terrific. So before we move to the committee, are there any other public appearances? Public, yes. Would you like to come up and speak? Come on, come right up to the, please come up to the podium and introduce yourself.
I need to talk into this.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so my name's Bennett Fraboni. I'm here on behalf of our business, Fraboni's Italian Specialties. And I hadn't paid much attention to the sign ordinance issue until recently it was brought to my attention that there could be some changes being made that would affect the signs we already currently have on our building. And I wasn't entirely sure about them. So I got the packet and I read through it, and I still can't quite make heads or tails of it.
Okay.
So I'm just gonna throw a couple questions out there, and then if you want to address them, cool. We have some signs on our building. We have a weird kind of property. We have our store back here, and then we have Angelo's right in front of us. And our store is not entirely visible from Monona Drive. One of the walls is, but we're kind of hidden back there, and that's always been a problem for us, you know, people not knowing we're here. Even people that live in Monona sometimes, which is shocking. But so what I heard was, we have a couple signs on the front of our building. We have the image of this guy, and then we have the typeface on a different part of the wall. So the way I understand it is one of those is going to have to come down, which seemed pretty odd since it's been up there for almost 35 years now. Also, we make a great use of window signs in our business, and they used to be hand painted by this guy Ray, who did a lot of signs around town, and he's not doing them anymore, but we've used them over the years to advertise for the business, to advertise for charity fundraisers, and to put up notice for help wanted, you know, to help hire people. And they're a huge part of our business and a huge part of our advertising. And, you know, people rely on those signs for those reasons, to know what's going on, to come to our fundraisers, to know what kind of specials are running. And also, you know, I would say like 30% of the people we hire come in because they see that sign. So I want to make sure that, I know there's restrictions on how much of your windows can be covered by the signs. And I think we're within within the guidelines as currently. But I just want to make sure that that's not going to change. I'd heard that if at some point we won't be able to use those signs, and we'll have to come down and make a presentation every time we want to put up a window sign, which seems excessive to me since we change them out weekly or so. I guess that's about it. I want to make sure that if these signs, the codes are changing, that if we'll have the chance to be grandfathered in with the signs we already have and the way we use our signs, because it's really, really important to our business, you know, the way we use our signage. And that's about all I have.
Okay, thank you. Okay, is there anybody else that wants to speak in the public hearing section before we close the public hearing?
Could I just ask a procedural question?
Yes, you may.
When would we be able to, or will we be able to ask any of the speakers any questions?
I would like to do that in consideration of the recommendation.
Okay.
Does that work for you?
You bet. Thank you.
Okay. Great. With no one else here in the public hearing portion, I'd like to close the public hearing portion and go to item D, which is consideration of the recommendation of the City Council on a sign ordinance update as requested by the City of Monona and presented by Vanderwall and Associates, case number 2-001-2018. So this would be the opportunity for the committee to ask questions of either Vanderwall or of the individuals here having made public appearance tonight. So, since I started at that end the last time, I'm going to go over here. Griff, do you have any?
I have no questions
You
at
have
this
no.
time.
Okay. Susan?
I had a couple. One, I guess I'd like to hear, Christie, if you had any specific things. I know you talked about redoing the whole thing, but I just wondered if there were some things that stood out that you were particularly concerned about.
Okay.
I'd be interested in hearing that. And then I think we should discuss the questions we just heard, because in looking through here, I'm not sure there is an issue, but we should figure that out, so.
Okay. Great. Would you like to go up now, Christie? Sure.
I want to start by saying I appreciate the feedback that was considered at the open house and the kind of the tweaks you've made on those, like allowing the menu boards. I know that was definitely a concern that had been brought to me from business owners in Monona. So one was specifically not allowing menu boards at multiple entrances, which seemed like it was kind of a minute detail, but for those businesses it was important. The facade sign, I've definitely been hearing a lot about that one, only allowing one facade sign. I know there are numerous businesses up and down Winona Drive that have facade signs facing their parking areas, and they're concerned about those having to come down or meeting a special exception. I love the addition of the sandwich board usage. I know that's been a challenge in the past. I remember working with Sonia Creasel. She was always struggling because people were reporting others on those sandwich boards. The businesses do love using those, and they're great for their short-term promotional activity. And I also love the idea of adding the flag signs that you said, the feather flags primarily?
No flags.
Okay, oh, extra flags, okay. I know the business community would love to see the addition of feather flag signs being added. It might be a temporary thing. I know they would love it on a permanent basis, but really those are not meant to be permanent because they don't last that long. Once again, you buy those online, so they don't last very long. But yeah, I think those were some of the issues that I'd heard. The other issue I've heard is from folks like, say, Ken's Meats and Deli, and for Boney's, who use the large paper signs. Those do cover a majority of their windows. And I know I saw the allotment was 50% of coverage. They probably are exceeding those. And so they have concerns about that as well.
Yeah, Chris?
Couple questions. In your initial talk, you said we're more restrictive. Are you aware that we actually loosened up all our restrictions? Everything you've talked about is looser. And the 50% on window signs was in our old ordinance. That hasn't changed.
Okay,
All it was
excellent.
is better defined.
Excellent, all right.
That's never changed. But the one you talked about, feather sign, that's not allowed. That's a safety thing.
Not
Any of the
allowed.
moving signs like that,
Sure.
people out shaking boards, that's never been allowed and it hasn't. But
So-
are you familiar with, I mean, how much stuff we actually loosen up? I mean, it's a much more,
Even on the
less
facade?
restrictive.
The facade signs? as
Absolutely,
well?
facades have always been one, and we've made special
Oh.
exceptions for special
Okay, got it.
situations, but we've never had more than one. Signs, we'll want to talk about that later, but as that, we've almost always allowed a logo along with the sign, which is what you have. You have Angelo's kind of smiling face. He used to be on Plan Commission for a long time. I served with him. You bet. And I dated myself. But the old sign ordinance and the new one both allow it, but what you're restricted to is a certain percentage of your facade or the square footage, depending on where you're at, which I've been to your place many times, I don't think you have an issue with. I think for some reason, there's a lot of people all of a sudden saying there's a new sign code, and they're getting crazy over this thing, where we've actually made it easier for businesses. A lot easier to understand and a lot less restrictive.
And maybe that was part of the issue, was the old sign code was difficult to get through, and, but I have been hearing a lot of
We had a big
panic.
struggle.
and-
The window signs
about that.
has always been 50%. It's always been, businesses putting it up and down, it's always been a staff review thing. The planning commission itself's never gotten into it. So whoever told you had to come here to get a permit for a window sign, I'm not sure where that came from. I think some people are just trying to stoke a little attention, which we love, because as
Brings people out.
well, yeah, but we've had 3 public hearings and 1 open house, and you two have come to this, and I think we had
One person?
one person. I know it was nice on the review, you said we had 10 people there, but the rest of us were city representatives. It said 10 people attended, but we're all city representatives except for the gentleman that owned Mr. Bruce, which was great that he came, and when we had that, we changed it based on some of his observations, which are really good
Excellent. I'm
observations.
so glad to hear that.
So I'm a little disappointed that the business community thinks that we're making it more restrictive, or we haven't tried to involve them. Your own newsletter over a month ago talked about trying to rally people to come to that open house we had.
Yeah, I was
And the
trying,
one that came
and
was
Ron came.
Mr. Bruce, because you told me he had to come.
Yes.
So,
Yes,
so
'cause I couldn't
it's
make
not
it
that we haven't tried to
Yes.
involve the community, we've tried really hard to involve the community in this, so.
Excellent. Well,
After, how long's it been, Mike, 4 months, 5 months, 6 months?
It started in July, I believe.
Our first
Okay, longer than that.
public
then.
facing was in October.
Okay,
So,
so after a long time, it's unfortunate
Yes,
that we
it's
get to
hard
this
to-
point where we're ready
it's
to
hard to
pass it
rally
on to the
people.
council, and it's like we never had a chance to see it.
well, I'm glad to hear that it's gotten a little less restrictive. I think that was a miscommunication, a misunderstanding that some people had, and I think some of that was after the open house. I had even heard that putting posters on your window, we're gonna need special permits. So I'm glad to hear that's not accurate. What about, so, say Ken's Meats and Fraboni's, who have the big paper signs that do cover maybe more than 50%?
50%,
Is that-
50% has always been the rule in Monona.
Okay.
And I have no idea how Monona will choose to enforce it, but it's always been the rule. The biggest thing they worry about, which you probably have a problem with, but the biggest thing we worry about is having too much on the entry door, the exit door, so people can't see other people coming and going.
They have 2 doors.
Do you? Okay, no,
Empty.
you know, that's one of the biggest things. Other than that, I don't remember the last time I've had a complaint at Plan Commission. It's been talked about maybe once every 5, 10 years if somebody's getting out of hand with too many things there. But I don't know the last time the city sent somebody out with a tape measure to make calculations to see how much it was. So I think it's
And that was gonna
mainly-
be my next question, was what is the regulation
Well,
process?
to me, it's like any regulation. Don't abuse it. And nobody's ever gonna complain, right? If you're at 52%, who's going to know that?
All right, excellent.
I'm not saying it's okay,
Yeah.
the ordinance is 50%.
Yes.
But if you have every window covered and you can't see in the building and it doesn't look like a front, the purpose of it is because there are a lot of community standards, a lot of people, including the businesses that want Monona Drive to look great,
Yeah.
want Broadway to look great, and if every window's covered over, it looks kind of a little different. If you remember Verizon when they did that, it was just a horrible look on the corner of Monona Drive
Okay.
and the
I do remember that,
Broadway.
yeah.
Yeah. They covered every window solid.
Yeah, I think maybe that's a personal preference, but I love the signs from Fraboni's and Ken's. It has that, gives the Monona that small town feel, and people were definitely concerned about that with the 50%, knowing that maybe they are over that, and where those gonna have to come down, because it's a great look. It says we're small town America, and we embrace that.
Okay, thank you. I didn't mean to go out of turn, I just, well, Chrissy was up here, I want to.
No,
Over
that's
a
all
couple
right,
questions.
that's all right. And I was, for those of you that might have the sign code in front of you, that, what the 50% that we're referencing is actually on page 13, under window sign category, where it specifically says there's no time limit as it relates to the display of window signs, and that they obviously can be of a variety of different materials. And that it is that 50% that Chris referenced. I would just argue that when people are coming in to ask for a job for Boney's, it's not because of your help wanted sign, it's because they understand they can get free porchettas. Just saying.
Or at least a discount.
Because they have so much money on signs.
Well, yes.
Can I just ask a question related to this window sign thing? Under the first column, it says sign permit and approver, and it says, yes, for each new sign, city staff approval.
That's
So
exactly what I was just gonna ask, thank you.
Is that what this concern
Yeah,
is coming from, maybe?
Yeah,
Because what does that mean?
Right.
right.
Do you guys want to address that?
That
They can't hear. You should
Come on up
probably
to
step
the
up there in case
podium
somebody
if you
actually is
would.
watching this. I need to pick on you.
Yeah, so the 3 different, essentially, the sign permit and approver, there's 3 different levels of that. There's no sign permit required, which you can see the active building that's in that same table there. That says, that does not require a permit in any capacity. City staff approval means going and seeing Sierra or the planner and saying, this is what I'm putting up, good to go. And she says yes or no. And then the yes, plan commission approval, that requires coming in front of the board, or coming in front of you guys right here, having a formal presentation, public hearing scenario that you're used to applying to those signs. So there's 3 essentially different tiers of this, and window signs in this iteration of the code requires city staff approval. And I think that is something that has been in there since the beginning of this process. I don't think we've changed that at all.
Chris?
I don't think we ever talked about it. I'd argue that that's a waste of city staff's time.
I would agree.
I don't think we ever talked about having city staff approve every time somebody switches a window sign. We just said, keep
Right.
it below 50%.
Right.
I'd agree. I don't know why that's there. I don't think it should be there.
Okay.
So I think it should say no sign permit required in that block.
Okay.
Okay.
And that's the only place we have to change it, right? There's no place else in the text part of the ordinance that, I didn't see it.
I don't believe so.
Yeah,
I believe
okay.
it's just in the table, yes.
Okay.
I can answer the
Oh.
questions from Verboni's. We were big customers on your Regent Street location.
I remember when I worked on Freedom Water Street.
Right, so we come here now.
Thank you.
Yeah. So, any non-conforming sign, regardless of sign type, can remain, unless the sign is physically altered, which tends to be the owner's choice. So, having a logo and the business name, if they're separated on the business facade, that can stay as two signs, as long as those signs aren't altered. If the logo is placed next to the business name, that counts as one sign. So we also created a kind of a workaround if you wanted to maintain your current signage but needed to replace the sign because something like your logo changed, or in a strip mall if a business moved out and a new business moved in and needed new signage. So what we did on page 23 of the code is we spelled that all out. And I think in the previous code, it was understood more than it was made explicit. So those protections now are in black and white under continuation of non-conforming signs.
Great. Did you have anything else? that you-
And the window signage, there's a workaround for that also. If you use poster paint on the inside of the window, you aren't covering as much of the glass, and that's okay. So there's a way to kind of stretch your message value by not covering the glass with paper. So that's another option that under the current code isn't available to you.
Okay.
Susan?
I have another question on page 12, under the menu boards. I know we talked about, and you referenced the fact that we talked about one menu board for each entrance, and yet, under Part D here, menu board, number of signs allowed, the second column, it says one for each business.
Right, we'll be changing.
You'll be changing that, so it'll say
Yes.
one for each entrance, okay.
Customer entrance. correct.
Customer entrance, which
We-
it says
we needed
above
to-
for blade signs, but,
We needed to hear that from you before.
Correct.
These haven't
No.
been incorporated.
This has not been
oh,
incorporated. in
okay,
that
okay,
draft.
got it, okay, okay.
Any other questions? Rob, do you have any questions? Oh, sorry.
We're
We were down at
no,
this
Mary.
end. Susan, I believe, I'm sorry, we stopped you.
Sorry.
Is there anything else, Susan, from you?
Oh, the only other thing I had, and maybe this is the same answer, because you went to the word site and defined site, but where we talked about flag signs, 3 flag poles per lot, and yard signs, 1 of each per lot. The question was raised about using the word parcel instead of lot, but are you going to change the word lot to site? That's the idea?
Sign
Okay, so
site.
it's the same answer as last question,
Yes,
got it?
thank you.
Okay, thank you. That's all I had.
Thank you. Brian?
All my questions are answered. Thanks. Looks great.
The only concern I have, and I haven't voiced this before, but I've brought it up at public safety meetings or public works meetings, is that some of our signs, some of the monument signs are compliant with this code, but they are definitely a hazard, particularly to vehicular traffic. And the issue is that when you come up to an intersection, often the line where you were stopping behind a crosswalk is further back than 15 feet from the curb. And so I'll reference Winnequa Road at the north end where it comes out to Monona Drive. We have a little shopping center there, and the Restore is back in there. And when you stop there and you were trying to go out onto Monona Drive, you can't see past the monument sign unless you pull over the crosswalk and just kind of edge your way out. And so I'm curious to know, you know, where that 15-foot rule comes from, and if we wouldn't consider making exceptions on a corner or regulating the distance from the corner, because it really has to do with your triangulation of vision out to the street, and this code seems to be silent on that.
Right, this was picked up from your current code.
Right.
And no sign is allowed within the vision triangle in any capacity. So what you're just describing would not be allowed, even if it is 15 feet, if it sits in the vision triangle. So that has to be determined by staff and reviewed by staff. But your issue of it being directly on that plane of vision as you're trying to see would be not allowed in this code.
And that's one of the reasons it has to come to staff and the plan commission is, you know, that's a site-specific detail and it needs a higher level of review.
I'd like to address it just a little bit further. I know the sign you're talking about. To me, the biggest problem, I mean, it feels too close, but the bigger problem is they've got those tall grasses past it. And we've talked about that at Plan Commission to change that landscaping, because those tall grasses probably add that much more. And if we could get rid of those tall grasses, it would help a lot. And the second thing, that's a really unique corner, and the reason it's like that is because when we had the sign, then when we went and rebuilt Monona Drive, we added that turn lane. So here's the property line where that sign is, and now we've got a turn lane back here, so the stop bar is back further because of that turn lane, so now the car is not stopping where it normally would, and that was from the rebuild of Monona Drive. If you see where I'm going with it, we pulled her back another 10 feet, so now the car is 10 feet further back than it should have been for the position of the sign. Your point is exactly right, and the vision triangle has to be looked at. It's always a condition on the application, but when you have something like this where it got changed afterwards, it's a hard one to have them relocated, but I do think that sign in particular, we need to ask them to get rid of those tall grasses at least there, because I think that would help a lot. And then some of our home signs we put in Monona Drive are the worst ones, our stone ones. They're bad.
That's a great point, thank you.
Okay, thanks.
Great. Rob?
Brian's not done. Oh,
No, sorry, I thought you were done.
Well, I have another comment to.
Oh,
this
sorry,
point,
I
because we've had signs that have come here and we've had that exact discussion, particularly like to trace the property when that went in. Not only did we have the concern about vehicular traffic, but also pedestrian and bike traffic that we addressed with moving that sign again. So this body has taken that very seriously.
Anything else from this side before I go over here, Rob?
I don't have a lot to add. I think you've done a really good job, and I think it improves our sign code drastically. So in general, I think I'm impressed with what you've done.
Well, a lot of it is now your sign code because we've customized what we typically recommend highly for your community, and I think we would want to share the credit with you.
Chris, anything else?
A couple questions this time on code in general. On page 2, item 9 towards the top of this, individual signs less than 1 square foot on area are not regulated by this ordinance. What is that?
So you would find like the mobile Pegasus on the gas pump, and that's typically less than 1 square feet. So these tend to be almost inadvertent use of the logo. And we find that practice is so common that it's prudent to allow signs under a particular size to just, we don't worry about them. And 1 square foot is traditionally what we've used. We found that to be a workable area.
I can see somebody abusing this and having all kinds of 1 square foot. I know it said you can't be used as a mosaic to create a bigger sign, but you could have. I think it's something we should consider. I mean, I can see that abuse. Is there a limit to the number of 1 square foot signs? And what's reasonable on a building? Is 100 1 square foot signs too many?
You know, in our history with this kind of regulation, which goes back more than 20 years. This one hasn't been an issue.
Okay.
But potentially it could be.
Page 4, definitions B in that first paragraph. These are temporary business signs. So business signs are typically used to promote temporary activities. I would disagree. I think the temporary business sign is when a business wants to, talk about, here's what we do, and today this is a big deal, and it might be for a sale, but it might be advertising the products or the merchandise, the food. That's a regular activity, but this is a sign that's only allowed for certain periods, but it could still advertise the core business of that business.
Yes. I think,
Isn't temporary activity trying to get at what you're saying?
No, it could be if it
You want
was
it
a
to be
sale.
broader.
Well, it could be the core business. I could want to use one of these temporary signs twice a year to advertise my core business.
and under that Supreme Court decision, we shouldn't be worried about actually what the sign is talking about. So I think we should tweak that definition to talk about it being used on a temporary basis, and that's really what defines.
Well, that's what it says. I'm thinking we could eliminate that whole second sentence, which says business signs are typically used to promote temporary activities.
Yes.
I think we could just eliminate that.
Yeah.
Okay? If everyone else would agree. Question on page 10. I know we've looked at it a bunch of times. I know I've commented on this, but the Speedway site still shows a property line going through the middle of it. I know they built on the whole property, so either if it's two separate parcels, we need to not include that back parcel, or if it's one parcel, get rid of that line showing that it's two parcels.
It's two parcels.
Then we need to eliminate the back parcel, because we only allow pylon sign if the parcel fronts on the belt line. And that back parcel would therefore not front on the belt line.
We'll
So
make
if that Speedway was tore down, somebody else could go in that back parcel and say, I get a pylon sign, which is not what our ordinance is.
Yeah. We'll make that change.
Yeah, so if it goes through the site, then this eliminate the back parcel as being eligible for a sign. There's signs on the front parcel anyway.
Right?
Page,
Anything else?
page 12. Where should we start? And these are ticky-tack things, the same thing we did last time, but there's just so much information in this. It's good to reread it and digest it again. I'll start up at the top maybe, where we show sign areas and heights for zoning districts. We are showing on-building wall signs of up to 100 square foot allowed in a residential district. We didn't talk about allowing a 100 square foot sign on a house. I'm sorry, B1, look at B1 to slide across, 100 square foot of area in a residential district. So a single family or a duplex could have a 100 square foot sign on it.
No, these are just allowed for businesses.
Well, but, so there could be a home business, that's my point. So if you have a home business, can they have a home business and put a 100 square foot sign on it? I don't think that's our intent in a residential district.
No, it's not. We'll clarify that.
Yeah, I think it should just, I don't think it should be in a, and then my comment was going to be under 5, projecting signs. They're not allowed. If we allowed any sign in a residential district, I think it'd be one like that, where you just hang it out and show a real small, modest sign that you have a business in there, but certainly not a 100 square foot wall sign. So we probably should see what the commission thinks about if any are allowed, but typically we haven't allowed much signage for a home business in a residential district.
No, and home business signs are regulated in your home business
I thought they were.
portion of your code.
Right. So are we saying that we need a whole separate category specific to home business as opposed to business? Or we should have something in the residential portion related to home business, Chris?
Well, we're showing residential there,
Right.
and perhaps the solution would be just to take residential out of that,
What I would do is,
or just show that you've got to look at the other one. Because I mean, it's nice to say you can't have a pylon sign in a residential district.
sorry, catch up with you. What I would suggest we do is take that cell that contains 100 square feet of area and divide it in two
Yep.
and put not allowed in the residential column, and then that 100 square feet would be in the other column, that
Correct.
second column.
Absolutely,
acceptable?
absolutely for that one, but what about these other ones? Do you still show a 12 square foot canopy sign or a 12 square foot awning sign?
We'll do the same for those.
What do we allow in our residential code for a home business sign? It's pretty, I mean, we allow it, but it's pretty nondescript. Do we, no?
I think we'd want to limit it.
Pardon?
We'd want to limit it.
Yeah.
I don't know what it is.
I was just trying to look it up now. I was thinking that they weren't allowed.
I thought we had some very minor, might be not much more than a yard sign or something, but the point of having a home business was not to advertise with big business signs there, but to allow people to get started or a small business. So perhaps we could come back to that if you get a chance to find out what it is, Sierra. On A2 pylon sign, when you go to the sign area formula, it says maximum 15% of front facade, but then of course the maximum area is 200 square feet. So why do we say maximum of 15% of facade? What's that about? In what situation would that control?
If you have a narrow building, the 15% would be the limit rather than the 200 square feet.
That'd be a pretty small building. I just don't want people to come up there and get the idea that they can go to 15%, because we have some really large buildings that have pylon signs. And anybody that's going to put up a pylon sign 30 foot high is probably not going to be a 20 by 10 foot facade.
Right. If it said a maximum of 15% of the front facade up to 200 square feet,
That'd be better.
we'll do that.
Okay. Under footnote 5, we talked about the individual channel letters, the backlighting, and that we're going to discourage the cabinet lighting. And it says internal illumination with opaque cabinet fields and a transparent message are acceptable. I thought we were going to tone that down a little bit.
That was language from a steering committee meeting that we had over the summer. I don't remember changing it since then.
I remember talking about toning it down. We're trying to encourage the individual lit, the backlit, and all the other things. We're trying to actually discourage that type of a sign. Kathy's not here. Do you remember that discussion, Sue?
I do, but where again are you looking on the?
Footnote 5, the very end, where it talks about internal illumination with opaque cabinet fields and translucent message are
Right,
acceptable.
okay, right.
Basically, that's a cabinet sign.
Right.
Yeah, I think it was in reference to some, I think, newer style or so. I think that there was some restaurant or something that you were referencing that it was okay looking in that capacity, but some of your older, not great cabinet signs were something you were trying to avoid. You didn't want to blanketly say no to all, but this was a way of saying this is what we would like to see and this is what we promote, but in some capacity, a cabinet type sign is
I thought
okay.
the word we ended up with, maybe I don't have the exact right one, but instead of saying are acceptable, are discouraged, but not saying they're not allowed.
I don't recall that we actually resolved that, because I do remember talking about it for a
Okay.
while, and I'm not recalling that we settled on specific language. I mean, it does say that the channel letters or silhouette style are preferred. But you could say, I suppose, message, comma, while not preferred, are acceptable. I don't know. What do you guys
Is the hope just to hope for the best that they do channel letters?
It's to push them
But-
in the right direction.
but they have
Push them
every
in the
right to do a
but
cabinet?
Say you don't, you have.
That's what it says.
Then, and if that's what we wanna, no matter how we word it,
Right.
if that's what we wanna allow, then let's allow it. I don't have a problem with the way it's worded right now.
Okay.
What about other folks besides Rick, Brian, Chad?
Or we could add, it's recommended. I guess I'm fine
We
with
could
Well, it
add,
does say
although
preferred already, so
discouraged, comma, and then what it says now.
It doesn't change
Kind
the
of
conformance
unusual,
of
would
it.
it not, to be putting such a
Right, yeah.
negative into code?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think we added the
I think-
acceptability because there have been situations where people have brought things forward that are newer
Right.
and seem to be just as appealing as some of these other options, where previously they were very unappealing.
yeah,
I think
I
it
think
was,
it's okay.
I think it was a Southtown property.
There was one I know that we talked about, and I just am not remembering either, but I think we thought it looked
It was either
okay.
there or one of the clinic sites. And maybe Chris might remember the clinic site sign.
Which clinic?
I think it was Merida Clinic. We had a discussion about a particular sign in the back area. I think
Mhm.
this is where that discussion came from. It was like where the MRI vehicle came in.
Sounds, I mean, without any kind of a formal motion, it sounds like the majority feel like it's okay to leave it the way it is, as opposed to changing it? Right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, next down, footnote 7, every business shall be guaranteed a minimum of 50 square foot of wall sign regardless of actual building facade length. You thought about that? That can be a pretty big sign, so if you got a building that runs 20 feet, they can have that full facade with 2.5 foot high, and the 20 foot next to them can run right into it. That's a pretty good sized sign, 50 square feet. Seems like a lot for a guarantee.
What would be your pleasure?
I don't have an answer. I just looked at that and thought that's a lot of sign on some of the facades where you rent a fairly small space.
Right, so right now it's 1 square foot. If we take out the guarantee, it would be the default of 1 square foot per every foot of facade length.
You're saying the current code says 1 square foot?
No,
per-
the proposed
The current
code.
draft.
Oh, okay.
Current code is, what percentage of the facade is percentage of the facade?
It's percent of area.
With a maximum, yeah,
Yeah, it's 10%.
with a maximum of, depending on where you're
Yeah,
at,
different
100,
districts.
150, it depends on where you're at.
Yeah.
50's a big guarantee.
Right, so
Do you have a recommendation there?
would 25 be more acceptable to you?
It would be, and the thing is, we're always allowed in an unusual situation to make an exception to this.
Yes.
So to come out point blank and say you're guaranteed a 50 square foot sign, and some people like to rent pretty small spaces, I can think of quite a few of them around here. That's a large sign that'd be way out of character with the place they're renting at 50 square feet.
So if we put the minimum at 25, then unless the space was less than 25 feet wide, they wouldn't be able to take advantage of that number.
Right.
Isn't the intent to allow a really narrow storefront to have a little bit of extra space?
Yes.
Still allow them a sign for sure.
Right.
Yeah. But 50 square feet, that could be 25-foot long sign with 2-foot letters.
Right.
That's a lot. I'd be more comfortable at the 25, and like we mentioned, we're always allowed, if there's an unusual situation, unique, we're always allowed to make an exception to this. But if you guarantee a minimum, you can't change that.
Right.
Optometrists are always asking for exceptions.
Always good for one dad joke.
Okay. Rob, how do you feel about that?
I think he makes a good point. I don't know what the magic number is. 25, I guess. I don't.
Chad? Ryan?
What about no minimum guarantee? So 1 foot per foot of, 1 square foot per foot of facade.
And the exception would always still remain available then, if somebody could make a case.
I mean, I think it's just way too hard to kind of put a floor minimum.
Yeah, that might make more sense.
Yeah.
To just
Like if
get
someone
rid of
is
that
renting
footnote.
that small of a space and they're wanting a sign that's more than that, I think.
So we would just take
I'd
out
rather
number
start-
7 altogether, just delete it. as
That
a
would be
footnote.
my
I like that.
Yeah,
idea.
okay. Thank you,
Can I go
Brian.
back to something else that Chris brought up?
Sure.
The 1 foot signs and having it written. What if we just got rid of that comment? That way it falls into the category of if there is abuse of small signs, there is a way to address that. But if we put, oh, we don't pay attention to this, then we don't have a way of addressing potential abuse.
I like it.
All right.
Chris, do you have any others? Keep
I
it,
do.
you're on a roll.
That was the,
The 1 foot little emblem that was being referenced on the,
yeah, within the text, you wanted to create a maximum number of those? Is that
No,
what you said?
just
eliminate
eliminate it.
discussion of it altogether.
Eliminate number 9 on page 2. Page 14. Okay, down in A3. We talked about this last time we went through it, and I brought up the point that A4 needs plan commission approval. And it used that whole block 1 through 4 was all staff approval. And I said we really need it for on-site directional signs, because that goes with their conditional use permit. My intent wasn't to have the on-site warning sign in there. My intent was that that would be a staff approval.
So on-site warning signs would be like no parking, no
Right.
trespassing.
Right, and I would think that wouldn't come to plan commission. That would be perfectly fine to have staff take a look at that.
We should put a line in there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But not have a plan commission approval for that. In that same area, 3 and 4, if we go down to sign locations, on building or freestanding, that footnote H, I don't think should be in there. It says on-building signs must be located within 10 feet of the main entrance. So some of these on-building signs might be one that says the alley's back that way, and it's not gonna be right by the entrance. So to say it's gotta be the entrance might take away the function of the sign. Okay? And to bring up one more controversial thing, on page 16, this is for the little yard signs, where there is no sidewalk, we say a minimum of 5 foot behind the back of curb. I think that's gonna get some pushback. We said we want it so you can't put them right out, so it's right in the traffic lane, but there's some areas we drive around the city, 5 feet may be too far. We put that in arbitrarily. It's something we've never really discussed, what the right number is. We put 2 foot behind the sidewalk and 5 foot behind the curb. Is that something that we're comfortable with? I can see some people wanting to have their yard signs closer than 5 feet.
I'm comfortable with it.
With 5?
5 feet back,
Okay,
or 10, or remove them.
yeah, 10's too much.
I think the perception of the public is the 2 foot behind the curb is, from a public standpoint, is the same as 2 foot behind the sidewalk, although I know it isn't.
Yeah.
I think that's the perception as people travel. Where I'm at.
So you're saying you would then leave it the way it is? Or
I would adjust the 5 foot to 2
To
feet.
2.
Oh, okay.
I would argue for 20 feet behind the curb if there is no sidewalk, and then people would have a incentive to install a proper sidewalk.
Motivational tactic.
Okay.
Sue, you had a comment?
Well, I'd be okay with 2 or just getting rid of the thing without a sidewalk. Just because I think there are a lot of lots where people have shrubbery and all, and their signs are always up to about 2 feet, a foot, even from the street. And we don't want them hanging out where they're obstructive, and I'm not a big fan of them either, I get that part. But the fact is, people are going to put them out, and I think 5 feet, for some people, that's just not gonna happen. So, I guess I'd be in favor of putting 2 feet behind the curb if we're gonna put that in there at all.
Okay. Griff, do you have?
Go for 2 feet by curb.
2 feet. 2 feet. Right.
5, I like 5.
Chris?
We'll have to
You know,
agree.
I'm good with 5, but I think it's gonna be an issue when it gets to city council, and it's going to be an issue for enforcement, and I think, some consistency might make it easier.
Right.
And I think you can't have 50 signs in your yard anymore, so that'll change the look a lot. So, I brought it up just for discussion, but I tend to think 2 foot would, if there's an area of 2 foot, and maybe we put a little thing in about camping in a vision triangle, I don't see these signs blocking it, but if
It's in there.
if there's some corner where it's just improper, I don't know. I mean, I don't know how much we neck down on those signs.
2 feet it is.
Okay.
Anything else?
Yes, page 17, D1, towards the end. We talked about how you measure a sign. And you say that the sign base is not part of the measurement. Now, we have always had, for example, a monument sign, we have measured the entire sign base, and that's how we came up with our 60 square feet. So if all of a sudden now you don't measure the base, we allow 60 square feet, maximum 5 foot tall, that's what gets you up to 12 foot by 5 foot. And you don't measure the base, that's 2 feet, you could now have a 20-foot long sign. I don't think that's our intent with monument signs.
I think our intent was to keep it the same, and we weren't aware of that difference.
Yeah, because you can see where I'm going.
Yeah.
With that verbiage, you could have a 20-foot long monument sign, I don't think that's what we're looking for. I mean, we're trying to keep it the same as it was.
Our objective was to keep it the same, we'll make that
Okay.
change.
Okay,
Great.
thank you. And then in D4, I was just unclear what that meant. Groupings of related smaller signs should be counted as one sign. Is that like the logo with the?
The mosaic, that's the mosaic.
So
of the
that's
small
with
signs.
Angelo's logo alongside their, Angelo's sign would be a grouping
Yes,
of signs that would make the one sign that's allowed for
right,
that.
but then we'd have to measure the rectangle containing the.
Okay, in the past, we have almost always consistently allowed a logo
Mhm.
for businesses, and that's almost always a separate sign to the main sign.
Right, and now.
And we've never measured them combined, we've said the logo so many square feet and the sign so many square feet.
And now we can't distinguish a
Can't
logo
read the sign
from
technically.
the text of the sign, because it's content-based.
Okay. That makes it difficult.
And not.
Pardon?
And not difficult, because I think it helps bring some simple clarity of.
Okay.
Right.
Unfortunately, if
And-
you're gonna also have a logo, you might shrink the size of your sign.
Yeah, and we can allow exceptions to this. Okay. And then on 5, I'm confused for the 3D sign. For us, we've always drawn a rectangle around it. You show a shoe there where you've got an exact outline of the shoe, and that would be the square footage. And for us, we've always had a rectangle around the sign because it's really difficult to start seeing what type of area different people are tracing.
I see. And if you've always done it that way, we should continue to do it that way.
We've done it because it can get to be such a can of worms trying to figure out how many square inches are in this thing.
Yep.
And I don't think we ever had a problem with it before.
Well, the diagram on the next page, page 18, I think is more accurate to how we measure our signs.
Right.
I would argue that's not even that accurate. Well, it depends, when you say the background, because we generally have just taken the rectangle around the sign itself, so it'd go to the top of the S and the bottom of the Y and to the ends, we wouldn't do the background with it typically.
If the background were a different color, it wouldn't make a difference. You'd enclose the message in a.
It does, but our example would be Staples, where you have that huge red background. We did not include that red background, we just included the Staples sign.
Okay.
So typically, we have gone just around the sign copy itself. Now, if the cabinet sign was that big, we would count it.
Right.
It was individually lit letters, we would count the rectangle around the individually lit letters.
Well, I think, yeah, then it's probably a staff kind of explanation when someone comes up and asks how my sign is specifically measured, for staff to step up and say, describe exactly what you just said, the difference between a staple sign and a cabinet sign in that capacity.
But I would argue our picture we have in there is wrong.
I think we need a third picture where
Yes.
you have.
This could be a cabinet sign, and then you could have the individual letters, where you'd have the rectangle around the largest letters and go in there.
Right, we need to show one with a background that shows.
Sure.
Like a facade.
Doing a rectangle around the message
I
of the.
think so. And then that shoe, I would change it just to have a rectangle around that shoe.
Yeah.
Is that it, Chris?
For me, thank you.
For you? Okay. I saw you folding up your paper, I thought that might be.
You thought hallelujah.
Rob, anything else?
No.
You're good? Chad? One more pass through?
No, it's so confounding. I think it's insane.
Okay, that being the case, do I have a motion to make a recommendation to the city council?
I move that we recommend the draft plan as modified both in this previous meeting tonight to the city council for approval.
Do I have a second? Last call, anything else? All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries.
It's been a pleasure working with you.
Thank you, appreciate it.
Madam Chair, can I offer a point of information for the Planning Commission?
You may.
This is Brian Gatto, the City Administrator. I just wanted to let the Planning Commission know that based upon tonight's vote, we will schedule this for City Council review. However, it likely probably won't be until mid-April or May, given some other things that are in the hopper right now. We will keep the Planning Commission informed as to when it actually is scheduled for City Council review, just so you're in the loop. But as of right now, I don't have a date certain when that's going to be.
Okay.
But just so you're aware.
Thank you, appreciate it. Moving on to item number 7, reports of staff and commission members, staff report.
The only thing I have tying up a loose end, we're finally getting around to finalizing the sign easement with Quick Trips so we can get the electric display board back up on Winona Drive and Broadway at that corner.
Awesome.
Okay.
Could
And
I
you are
comment on that?
anticipating a March 25th meeting related?
No.
You're not anticipating, or we don't know?
There will be no meeting on March 25th.
No meeting on
Nothing has
March.
been.
Okay, so we're taking the tentative nature of the 25th off, it's canceled.
Okay.
Okay?
Could I comment on the sign? Quick Trip sign?
Mhm.
We have the easement for Quick Trip to be able to move it back, but one thing we talked about looking at is in our ultimate wisdom, when we put that sign in, we got an easement. Instead of getting easement from PDQ at the time, we changed the right-of-way. If we'd only had a easement from PDQ, we wouldn't be in the right-of-way, and the DOT would have no regulation over it, because the only thing that puts it in there is that we changed the right-of-way right there to include the sign. So the only thing I'm suggesting was ever to, able to put that right-of-way back where it was, our sign as built right now would be fully functional, would be out of their jurisdiction, it wouldn't be in the right-of-way anymore. Am I making sense? What makes it in their jurisdiction is that we actually widen the right-of-way, because we said, we don't want an easement, we'll just widen the right-of-way there. So when all the plats were done for the Winona Drive rebuild, we also did that. And if we'd have simply gotten an easement, we'd have been out of the right of way, and I believe that's what's catching our toenail on why we didn't have to spend all the money relocating this thing.
So is that state right of way now?
Well, it would be, well, the county, I think, but it's a state.
Is this a viable option, or is this just
I
like a-
I don't know, I'm just bringing it up because I went back and looked at that plat of survey, and that's what puts that sign in there. And I believe that's their only jurisdictions because it's in that right of way.
Is it only the corner, like the diagonal, that was altered, or did we push back the entire?
We took it around, if you know, it's got the diagonal, it's got those two legs. We took it around that leg because that leg's outside of the original right of way, that sign that goes parallel to Broadway. So we took it around that and then came in. So yeah, it's all of it, but it never used to be right of way. We should have kept it as an easement, but who would have known? It's a lot of money to shove a sign back a couple feet.
Is it
Is it too late to
call the
change it back?
DOT and see if it's, you can go back in time a little bit?
Probably have to check with Strand and see. when
Nothing's
the-
that quick with the state.
We probably have to check with Strand and see when the plat survey is done, if that went to Dane County or the DOT, or how that went. Maybe call the DOT first and say, if we get it out of there, are we okay? I don't know why the DOT is trying to regulate that. I know why. There was a call, because Fitchburg had a sign that was shut down.
Great. Any requests for information regarding other development projects? Do I have a motion to adjourn?
adjournment.
Second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
We are adjourned. Thank you.